Active and passive voices in English are two grammatical voices that have distinctive purposes in certain types of speech and writing. The active voice is a grammatical structure in which the subject of the sentence performs the action of the verb, making a direct expression such as, "The cat ate the food." On the other hand, the passive voice is utilized when the subject receives the action of the verb, resulting in an indirect construction. This voice emphasizes the action itself, or the subject of the action, and is also the foundation of participial adjectives. I already made a video about this topic, and I briefly mentioned the passive voice, which is used with participial adjectives and also the preposition by. I would recommend re-watching that video, because in this video, the passive voice will be explained thoroughly, so participial adjectives must be known to understand this voice. An example of that is, the food was eaten by the cat, using the participial adjective eaten and the preposition by. In this case, the passive voice puts the focus on the thing being acted upon rather than the subject acting, so the subject is acted upon instead of doing something. While the active voice typically makes writing engaging and more dynamic, the passive voice can be useful for emphasizing the action, and this is the difference between the two. In sentences with an active voice, the subject always comes before the verb and the object, creating a direct and dynamic tone. The cat ate the food signifies that the subject, the cat, is performing the action, ate, on the object of the action, the food. This structure is a common simple sentence. Other examples are, I visited the museum. You cooked a meal. He wore a sweater. She wrote a beautiful song. We built the house. They watched this video. With the active voice, no matter which verb is used, structuring each sentence so that the subject performs the action is what makes this voice. In sentences with a passive voice, the action's object is the focus, so the subject receives the action of the verb. The subject is acted upon by something else, which makes it perform the action. Additionally, every sentence in the passive voice will always have two verbs, a conjugated form of to be, and the main verb's participial adjective. The food was eaten by the cat signifies that the action's object, the food, is positioned first as the grammatical subject of the sentence. So, the food is the subject, but the performer of the action is shown later in the sentence, usually with the preposition by. Once again, there are two verbs in passive voice sentences, a conjugated form of to be, which is was, and the main verb's participial adjective, which is eaten. The food was eaten by the cat. This structure is more indirect because the subject of the clause is the receiver of the action. To make learning simple, let's put the previous examples that I've shown in the passive voice. The museum was visited by me. The meal was cooked by you. The sweater was worn by him. The beautiful song was written by her. The house was built by us. The video was watched by them. Every sentence has a conjugated verb to be, in the past, a participial adjective, and a preposition by, followed by the action's performer. Notice how the receivers of the actions are the focus, which makes them the subjects. Sentences in the passive voice are often longer than sentences in the active voice, because they have to include additional words like the verb to be, participles, and prepositions. Both the active and passive voices play a big role in writing and speech, and when to use them depends on your writing. It's important to be intentional with your selection because the choice between the active and passive voice can impact the tone, emphasis, and clarity of the writing. A lot of native English speakers perceive the active voice as stronger and more engaging because it's more concise for emphasizing who or what is performing the action. It's also the top choice for many writers because it focuses on a subject that is performing an action. So it's something that you can commonly find in many books, digital media, and other literature. Sometimes, the passive voice might be necessary because it's more important to focus on the receiver of the action, rather than the person or thing performing it. This nuanced approach can be useful when the action's performer is unknown or irrelevant in the context. In many reports, the passive voice is used, emphasizing an action that occurred, because the performer is not known. A very good example of that is "shots were fired," which is used a lot in criminal studies. This sentence is in the passive voice because it's unknown who performed the action. It could be police forces, criminals, or something or someone else. Overall, this is how the active voice and the passive voice work in English.